in just a moment as people get onto the line. Welcome everybody to the Leaders in Housing Counseling call, first one in December, one of the last two for 2014, and we're a week away from our national conference on our Leaders in Housing Counseling conference. So we're going to dive right in and run quickly through what we're going to talk about today. So housing counseling funding and our sign-on letter, which is circulating right now, which we hope we'll be able to close on Monday. So please, if you're considering, now's the time to get it signed. Tax relief for struggling homeowners. This is the item we've been reporting on every call almost throughout the year on the Mortgage Debt Relief Act. Got some good news on that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the December 11th meeting, kind of a briefing for people who are coming, and but also for people who are not able to come, give you some sense of where we're going if you want to make input to it, and to our plans for 2015. And then there's some small changes to HAMP, well worth knowing about. We talked about this last week, 2 weeks ago, about the lender discrimination against people with disabilities, but we got a little bit of reaction from people in the field and wanted to revisit it a second time. We have the webinar series, and which we just did the first one of, and wanted to catch up with Teresa Bardwell, who ran the first one, about what we're going to be looking at for 2015, around especially around compliance issues and things and reporting issues. Should be very helpful. We've got a list of new member organizations who've joined NHRC in the last month or so, which is really nice. We've grown quite a bit in this last year, so glad to brag on it. And at the very end, we'll make a plug to get even more people to join NHRC. So all very good, but let's get to work here. So, so we've got a letter circulating. Matthew, what's the story?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. So hopefully everyone has seen this now, but we just wanted to talk a little bit about the letter that we have. As folks probably know by now, this is step one in the process of us advocating for funding for housing counseling. So we're talking now, and this gets a little confusing because the FY 2015 budget is still not settled, but we're working now on the letter for FY 2016. That process is still going to go ahead on schedule regardless of what the current Congress or the next Congress is doing on FY 2015. So hopefully everyone has seen the letter. Hopefully many of you have signed, and folks that haven't will immediately after the call. But just wanted to talk about what we're asking for and kind of a rationale and give folks an overview of what's in there. So the first item is the HUD Housing Counseling Assistance budget. So we've asked in the letter for $65 million for HUD Housing Counseling Assistance. As you see on the screen there, that would be an increase from the $47 million that the House passed and the $49 million that the Senate passed. And we expect that the final number will be in that range for FY 2015. As we've talked about so many times on this call, it's really difficult, and we need to make a strong argument to get an increase in funding. As you recall, for FY 2015, we were able to get the original House number up from 45 million to 47 million, which was a big win for us, getting that $2 million increase relative to other programs, many of which were cut, very few of which saw increases. So we have it's definitely a challenge for us, but we think that we have a strong argument to make for why Congress should increase funding for housing counseling. The first kind of main argument for it is that whenever we're in Washington, whether it's talking to folks from the White House or members of Congress or their staffs, the focus in Washington largely is on the recovery, and for Democrats in particular, it's for, they talk about the recovery and that they really stress the need to make sure that it's more broad-based and that it's reaching people that haven't been reached. They're aware of the fact that the recovery has not been widespread, and as especially low and moderate income communities and communities of color have largely been kind of left behind and are still feeling many of the effects of the crises. So that's a really strong argument for us that that as the focus shifts from the crisis and towards the recovery, that there needs to be a lot more resources available to fund pre-purchase counseling so that we can make sure that the recovery is being expanded to more widely than it is now. So we think that's an argument that really resonates in Washington, and that's the main one we're going to make for why they should allocate additional funding for HUD housing counseling. There are a few other arguments that we make. One of the other big ones is that also resonates is there's a lot higher costs, as folks on the call know, for agencies as a result of what Congress did with the Dodd-Frank Act. Especially it's the requirement for certification and the training and the testing, all of those costs. But there are other increased costs as well. Amy Ford from the housing, the Council on Aging, excuse me, wrote in and suggested that we add some language about increased costs around HECM counseling. So we included that as well. But this is another good argument that if Washington is going to make it more expensive for agencies to operate, there needs to be some additional funding to help defray those costs. So that's why we're asking for the $65 million. We obviously chose that as the highest number that we think we can plausibly get. And again, it's a challenge, but that's the number we're going to fight for. Then the second part of it is obviously the NFMC funding. With that, we asked that they keep the level funded at $50 million for FY 2016. We've mentioned on the call whenever this comes up, whenever we're talking with appropriators, and even Democrats are careful to stress to us that NFMC was meant to be a temporary program, even was originally intended to be a one-year program. And they make very clear, and their actions have followed, that this is a program that's winding down. So we think that the best ask there is that they just not reduce funding for NFMC this year. And the argument there is pretty obvious, and folks on the call know this, but it's our job to make the case and make people in Washington realize that as much attention is paid to the recovery, there's still many families and individuals who are still feeling the effects of the crisis. So whenever there's coverage of foreclosures happening now, there's a lot of stress on how the percentage decrease year over year from the previous. So how many fewer foreclosures there were in September of 2014 compared to September of 2013. And while that's true and that's good news, the reality is that foreclosures are still twice as high as they were for the pre-crisis levels. So from 2001 to 2006, the average was about 21,000 foreclosures a month. We're still looking at 46,000 foreclosures a month. So we're pushing back on the narrative that the crisis is over. And then the other component of that, as you see on your screen, there's still a really high number of serious delinquencies. So nationwide, it's almost 5%. It's over 4% of all mortgages are seriously delinquent. And again, as folks on the call know, in some states it's significantly higher than that. And so we make the argument that it's important to help these homeowners who have been victims of the crisis and the crash, but it's also very important to stabilizing communities and especially to maintaining what recovery we're seeing. That if folks, these 4% of folks who are seriously delinquent, if large numbers of them end up in foreclosure, that's going to eat away whatever gains we've seen in the housing market. So again, we think those are arguments that really resonate in Washington. And this is step one. This is going to OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, which is the office that's responsible and is headed by Sean Donovan, the former HUD secretary. So also a potentially friendly audience. But they'll then put together the president's budget that will be sent to Congress. So this is the early stages, but it's important for us, as it always is, to get as high numbers as we can in the president's budget. Then that will strengthen our hand as we talk to Congress. So Bruce, I don't know if there are any questions or anything that you want to add.
No, that was excellent. I would just, as we put these sign-on letters out, we do get comments from you, and we want to incorporate those. So as Matthew said, we did make a few little changes on the sign-on letter. None of them we think are substantive in intent, but certainly we will post what the latest version is. The most significant one was that Council on Aging had asked us to add a sentence about the increased requirements for reverse mortgage counseling as an added expense in the list of what the added expenses were. And that's, I think, the kind of thing that fit perfectly into the script, and we're glad to do that sort of thing. We tightened up the letter a little bit as well, so you'll see it's slightly different, but in terms of the broad ask and the rationale, it's all the same. So I looked about half an hour before the call started. We had 95 groups signed up, so that's fine. But if you want to sign up, be sure to click the link and get registered. We would love to close this out Monday and get it turned in. And so, if you're interested, jump on now.
And it does make a huge difference. Obviously, if 100 groups signed on is great, but if we have 200, that obviously makes a much better statement too when we send it in.
Yeah, and there will be other sign-on letters coming down the line. And this is, as Patty said, the first step in the process. So it'll be a long process, and we'll also do some things on the current existing budget as well. So plenty more to do here. It fits into the rest of our work. So we finally have some glimmer of good news on the Mortgage Debt Relief Act. Matthew, what's up?
Yeah, so finally, with very little time to spare, the House has yesterday finally passed this broader tax extenders package that has a little bit of something for everyone, but among what it has is the Mortgage Debt Relief Act. So I'm sure folks know exactly what we're talking about, but this is for homeowners who receive a principal reduction. As a result of this passing, well, it passed the House and it's expected to pass the Senate. So once it's become law, folks who receive a principal reduction will not need to claim that as taxable income. The important thing is it covers the entire calendar year for this year. So it goes back to January 1st and goes through December 31st. So it's good for the next 3 weeks. Their Senate was hoping to pass a 2-year package, but that blew up, and they've mostly given up on that happening. So it looks like we're going to have 1 year of it. So there's a question whether this will cover short sales and foreclosures, and yes, it will. It covers any debt that's forgiven. So any mortgage debt that's forgiven will not be considered taxable income.
So just let me put you on the spot here for a minute. So in the past, cash-out refinances were not included. Do you know in this version if they would be included?
I'm actually not positive on that, and I can
Yeah.
check on that and get back, send an email out after the call.
The annoying thing about that, of course, was that a lot of the aggressive subprime lending was, in fact, cash-out refinances, using the cash-out to pay bills. But so some people got knocked out because of that. We were never able to change that, but so it's unlikely we were lucky on this one, but worth checking. Good. So then let's move on to our meeting coming up next Thursday coming. So first thing is, if you have not registered and you're planning on coming, you should please register right away. We are filling up, and we need to know clearly how many people will be there. We'd love you to participate, but really need to get everybody registered now. So please go ahead and do it. There's a separate registration for members, which is a full-day meeting, and for general NHRC population, the meeting starts in the afternoon. I think highlights is that we're going to use the morning to do kind of a really intense internal discussion about what the priorities for our work should be in 2015, and maybe a little longer as well. Kind of spend some time about what the headwinds are that we're facing, but what the opportunities are as well. We are kind of on the cusp of lots of big opportunities, and at the same time, lots of challenges, especially financial, but also programmatic. And thinking about what we can do as a community to address some of these issues, and what we should lay on the desk of NHRC, and what priorities NHRC should take out of this as well. But we're really thinking of this as a giant brainstorm for the community as a whole, and are eager to have that conversation. At lunch, we still have an open invitation to Secretary Castro, and they have not been able to confirm one way or another if he's coming, and all fine. We do understand that we end up getting probably one of the first meetings that was available to him in September, and we certainly have tremendous access at HUD, so we'll roll with those punches as they develop. The meeting itself, starting at 1, will be a little bit of a recap of where we are in the year, the position of the industry. But we're going to spend a lot of it with panels of experts bringing in their own particular perspective to give us some bigger, broader view of our work and opportunities. So the first panel will be at 2, and that's going to be representatives from the White House, from HUD, from FHFA, CFPB, from the regulators, from OMB. And the conversation really is an extension of what we did with them a month ago. The whole idea is, can there be a federal strategy that really coordinates everything that's being done with housing counseling agencies, so that we have one common metric for evaluating the work. We have a standard that says you need to be a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. You can't be a for-profit. Can we have really excellent solutions to the language access problems? Can we do things that will build in housing counseling into the decision-making process? Can we build in funding for housing counseling into more programs? So lots of items on the table. We'll probably hear from many of these agencies in the meeting about their own kind of slice of all this, but our goal kind of is to push this conversation along further to get more resources to organizations and more opportunities. They will start meeting in January on a regular basis, and we'll hopefully be able to coordinate and produce some value out of all this. That should be a pretty interesting conversation. We're going to have a report from the Office of Housing Counseling, our friends, and we will have kind of a candid discussion with them about HUD task force had a marathon meeting couple months ago with them, and to see where we are in terms of follow-up. Fareen Alam will be with us from the Urban League, who headed up the task force. We'll run through some issues. We know that HUD wants to provide us with some updates as well, and so that should be a good conversation. And then at 4 o'clock, we're going to have, we're calling it a candid discussion with Friends of Housing Counseling. So these are outside groups who look at our work, see us in different lights, and will kind of give us their kind of cut on what we should be looking at. And I think this is going to be a pretty fascinating discussion. We have Cy Richardson from the National Urban League. If any of you know him, he's a very high-level thinker, very kind of aggressively thoughtful about asset building in the communities we work in, and the tremendous wealth gaps and racial issues that happen in this country. So he'll be, I know, insightful and give his own kind of view of the world in this that I think we'll all take something from. We'll have Janice Bodler. So many of you may have known her when she worked at NCLR, one of the early pioneers in the housing counseling world, and with lots of other kinds of programs to build wealth in communities. She's now at a senior position at the Chase Foundation, brings a whole different perspective to things, and she'll have her own particular view of all of this. We will also have Julia Gordon, who's the Center for American Progress, their housing expert. She's been on our call, I think, at least once. She's somebody that we often consult with, and you get to see her on TV a lot and commenting in the newspaper. Very, very thoughtful about housing policy in the United States. Definitely has a perspective, I think, that housing counselors will embrace, and she'll give us her view of what we can expect in 2015 and what we should be looking out for or where we should put our energies. And then finally, we'll have Hala Farid, who longtime housing counseling supporter. She was a counselor with NeighborWorks many, many years ago, and is at Citibank and has helped, certainly provide funding for lots of organizations, but also worked on foreclosure issues, and has kind of a deeper, broader view of the work from where she sits. So I think all 4 people will have, a pretty interesting conversation, a lot to tell us about. We'll then spend some time at the very end of the meeting thinking about what our priorities ought to be for 2015 from what's come up in all this. And then we're going to break for drinks and dinner at the Capital City Brewing Company. Thanks to several people for suggestions of where we should go. Matthew wound this one up, but and that'll be sponsored by Auckland. And but this will really be we'll have an hour for people to really hang out and talk some. We'll have a chance to sit down and have dinner, but it'll be as much a networking as anything else part of the meeting. So it should all be pretty valuable. I really do want to encourage you, if you are planning on coming, you should be registered by now. Please do that. Very helpful to us in terms of resource allocation and making sure that there's enough room for everybody. Good. And let us know if there are questions or concerns you've got. So let's shift on to, Treasury has announced some new changes to HAMP. These are not the big revolutionary changes we have been asking for. They're small things, but they're things that are important for you to be aware about for your clients because they do provide some value. But they're not going to change the universe in lots of ways that we had hoped to change. But the big one is that if you end up without a serious delinquency after 5 years on your HAMP modification, currently you can get a $5,000 payment to buy down your principal, and they added a second year, or a 6th year, I guess you'd say, to that list, and a second payment of $5,000 if, again, you're not seriously delinquent at the point when the money becomes available. at the end of the 6th year, and then another $5,000. So you could get a total of $10,000 that might be used for principal reduction. They are also, interesting in the press release, they're saying that the loan should be recast. When they described it to me, they said that they would encourage the servicers to do that. The idea is that with the principal reduction, there'll be a modest decrease in the monthly payment that people owe. But they, I believe that's going to be, I'm not sure whether that's mandatory or that's voluntary. It appears to be mandatory in this press release, but we'll have to go back and figure it out. The other changes are, actually this actually probably does affect our work in some ways. For HOFA-assisted homeowners who are going to a short sale or deed in lieu, they've raised the relocation assistance to $10,000. Obviously, that makes people's lives easier in a variety of ways. It helps cover the cost of moving, but also for deposits and for deposits for rental and for getting utilities turned on and things like that. So that's a helpful piece as well. And we'll still kind of try to push for changes in HAMP, and there's a question about whether we can get another extension on HAMP and add another year. All those things we'll work on in 2015. All right. So I wanted to revisit this question about lender discrimination against people with disabilities. And the situation was that HUD took an action on a lender in one of the Dakotas who had a home buyer who was an applicant, and they were relying on disability income. And essentially what the lender did was they said, well, we need you to show us that we're going to have 3 years of commitment of payment on this income. And as we all know, that you can often get a year commitment out of these kind of agencies, but 3 years is difficult or maybe impossible. So that was a problem. And the second one was that they contacted the doctor of the person who had the disability to see if the disability was permanent or not. And HUD's ruling on this was that you were treating disability income to a higher standard than you were other forms of income. And as a result, you were discriminating against these folks. And since then, I've gotten some correspondence from others of you that have said they have seen this in the field, and I guess one agency, maybe it's more than one, has been asked to actually try to collect this information for the clients because the lender didn't want to do it. And the question is, what does one do in those circumstances? And my reply was, well, I think you have to tell them that that would be a violation of HUD rules, and you would ask them not to do that. But I'd be very interested if other people have had experiences around this and what the reaction is, and if this is an area that we ought to try to expand and learn more about. There are a number of national experts that are that we're in touch with, and we could spend some time with them. So the National Fair Housing Alliance has sort of offered to help provide us with some guidance on these questions. And I know that some of the agencies that participate in these calls are fair housing agencies as well. They have broad kind of experience on this, and it'd be very interesting if there's demand for it. So I'm really just checking in and seeing what you think, if this is an area that we ought to be doing more on, and if you would like to get more briefings on them and more information. So let's see, we had our first webinar. There are these NHRC webinar series that we're doing. It's really for members of NHRC, but it was to really address the idea of helping agencies in their communications with HUD, the reporting systems and all the compliance systems, that we have some experts in our midst who have done a lot of work in this field, know a great deal about it, and should we do a program like this. And we did the first one on the 9902 form. I participated in it, and Teresa Bardwell did the training from our CAC. I have to say it was excellent. It was a lot deeper knowledge than I expected. HUD participated as well, which was very, very helpful. And I think there was a lot to be gotten out of it. And we have Teresa on right now, and I'm just going to ask if she wanted to just describe what the upcoming trainings look like and what we are planning. So Teresa, are you on the line?
I am on the line. I know I'm unmuted, right. So I'm thrilled to be a part of this series, particularly for NHRC members. And what we've done is we're trying to, there's been so many changes at HUD recently and more coming next year. So we're trying to capture kind of the general, here's how you do it, and within that also capture all the changes that are going on. And so our webinar yesterday, we kind of did an overview of here's how you use the 9902, but with it we also incorporated all the changes with the new form that started in October. So that's kind of our goal as we go through each of these. And so what we're looking at as a schedule is we're trying to hit the main compliance areas that agencies either have issues with or have a lot of questions on, and that we've also seen changes with. So the next one we're going to be looking at, we know that the holidays are busy and it's kind of crazy when you get back, so we're going to do our next one, and they'll be the first Wednesday of the month. So if you forget what the date is, just think first Wednesday of the month. Our next one will be on the 9910, which is your performance compliance. And the document was changed this year by HUD, and we'll be going over, here's what the document looks like, when they get ready to do your review, here's the kinds of things that they're going to cover, and we'll go over the changes that have occurred in that 9910 form for you. And then the next one we're doing will be March 4th, and that's the agency work plan. So the basis that HUD comes out and looks at your review, they start with your housing counseling work plan. So it's something you should be looking at annually, and we're going to go over what specifically should be included in that, and then a few items that have been added because of some of the changes during the last year. The next one we'll do will be Wednesday, April 1st, and it's not an April Fool's webinar, but we will be doing quality control plans. And at this point, there is no recommendation from HUD on what to include in quality control plans. So we do have a template that as an intermediary we have used with our group that HUD has reviewed and been happy with, and it was developed largely from findings we were seeing with agencies within our own groups and then outside, things that I'm hearing about. So we'll go over quality control plans and what should be included. And I understand that HUD is working on a quality control plan template now, and so hopefully that will be out by that time and we can incorporate that into the training as well. Then the next one we'll be doing will be the information, or the last one for this series will be the information security plan. And because of scheduling difficulties in May, we didn't want to try and compete with NeighborWorks NTI, which will be, I think, in Kansas City. We're going to go ahead and do a June meeting for that one. And data security, is becoming very, very critical, as you're hearing almost daily now, the large systems that are being hacked from Home Depot and Target, and now Sony has had a major one. So we really understand the importance of securing our data, and so we'll be going over from a legal standpoint, the Grand-Leach-Bliley, which was passed in 1999, it's been around for a long time, but a lot of agencies aren't aware of it. So that's kind of the basis that we work from, and then we will probably incorporate in with that the red flag plan and other information, and give you some idea of how to set up an information security plan. And with both the quality control and for the information security, it's really critical that you set up how you're going to monitor and document the plans, and so we'll be going over that information as well with both of those. And I know the question you're all asking is there's one missing from this list, and that is the certification of counselors. So if the final rule were to come out, we will see what we can do to work in either a May workshop or maybe shift around to cover that as soon as possible after the final rule comes out. But we'll just have to wait and see on that one. So we hope you'll join us. We are providing some additional documents with the webinars, and we think you'll find it very helpful. So I do hope you'll join us for as many as you can. Bruce?
Great. I have to say, I was very impressed with the first one. It's very helpful stuff. And I think you do an excellent job, Teresa. It's very helpful to have HUD on as well. So
Thank you.
These are all very, very useful.
The nice thing is we're trying to use different people from HUD, so we're getting whoever's the expert for that area. So I think that's helpful too to have. It's so nice to have HUD on the phone to answer questions right there. And so that's something you don't see on a lot of the trainings that are out there. Absolutely.
And we will, this spring, we'll also do another survey on what are the kinds of trainings people are interested in getting. These were chosen based on your votes on which ones should be priorities for us. We'll develop more as we'll have another list next spring, which will help plan for what we do in the summer and fall. But very helpful stuff. Thanks so much. Well, I think we have a couple minutes here, so I really, literally, before we got on the phone, got on the call, got an email from Daniel Ruggiero from Homes on the Hill about problems with HCO, and I just thought I'd red flag this for people and see if others have had problems. We do have somebody pretty senior at Fannie Mae has asked us to send in problems we have with HCO, which he will elevate and I think hopefully use to argue for more resources for HCO. But let me just hit the highlight of I think what the biggest concern was that he had raised, which was that you couldn't any longer pull midterm or monthly 9902 reports by any date range. We can now only pull a 9902 report after the entire quarter has ended, that is January 1st, 2015. What they're saying is that Fannie Mae has done basically meeting the minimum requirements that HUD has for their reporting mechanism, but it means that you can't do monthly reports on this, you can't track your progress well, and you are essentially required to do this reporting very much at the end of the reporting, completely at the end of the reporting period, and you only have a small window to, if there are problems, in which to fix things, because I mean, in his case, he has to report to an intermediary. I know many are in that situation, but even if you're not, you're still in a limited time frame in terms of getting these things done on a timely basis. So this was a red flag to me. I had not heard this before, but this is the kind of thing that we want to elevate with Fannie Mae and also potentially with HUD. So I thought I would make sure that there's that this is an issue that others have seen, and if there are other issues with HCO. I think the other big thing that we heard consistently and that we raised with FHFA and in the meetings with HUD last September and October was the inadequacy of the help desk. That the help desk was not responsive, and what came from it was clearly understaffed. And there's reporting to the federal agencies has improved at HCO. There still end up that people have some glitches. But if you've got more things to add to that list, you know, put it in your box, or put it in the comment box and shoot it our way. So anyways, I wanted to red flag that. Let us know if you've had an experience around that at all. The other thing I just wanted to say is we've really done really well in terms of lots of groups joining NHRC this year. Can tell you how valuable we think this is, and so we've got a whole new list of groups in the last this is probably the last six weeks or so that have joined. and some of whom have been quite active on this call and in our meetings, and some of whom I don't know as well. And I'm very glad to have you all on this. A few of you are going to be participating in the national meeting next Thursday, and that's just great to have you in all of it. We will do all we can to try to do as much work as we can to help everybody in the industry, but obviously also try to have something that is special specifically for members so that there's extra value in you joining. I do appreciate, though, if people occasionally put in a comment and really do appreciate the fact that really what you're doing when you join is to support the work and try to strengthen the work. And membership benefits are a great thing to have, but that the real goal here is to help build the industry and the community that we work in. So,
Bruce, I'm just going to jump in quickly.
Okay.
Someone just had a comment on the HCO issue.
Oh, good, yeah.
Which is that you can get the source data from HCO on the HUD submission page, and through pivot tables get the numbers for funders. And then the same person followed up with there is an issue with errors with HCO. This is another issue to flag, an issue with errors with HCO in the 9902 update.
Do they say what it is? Oh, just that there are errors in the reporting?
It just says there's an issue with errors with HCO in the 9902 update. I guess the 9902 update is that it hasn't been. It's causing errors with HCO. So that seems like a big thing to be addressed.
Absolutely. Well, so let us know if others have had this experience as well. We should follow up on that one and try to identify what the specific errors look like. Part of our campaign here is to try to get Fannie Mae to commit more resources to it. There are these rumors that Fannie Mae is going to walk away from HCO. It's clearly not what Fannie Mae is saying publicly or saying to us. And so we're saying if they are going to, they should fund a real transition to someone else and make sure that the users are not left hanging. Certainly they're telling us at this point that they remain committed to HCO, and so the real challenge is to put more resources into it. Good. Well, so let me just quickly wrap up here. We've got, we want to encourage people to join NHRC. We've added this new line of webinars. We also have we have a number of resource pages now that are just for members that provide you with contacts in reaching servicers on foreclosures, funding sources with lenders and other institutions to support housing counseling. We have a range of tools for working with the Federal Home Loan Banks that have down payment assistance for people who are buying houses for the first time, as well as other affordable housing program opportunities. So all of those are bundled up into the package. We still have our discounted credit reports through CIS. So a lot of good things we've got out there, but of course the real goal here is that you're supporting the struggle to move housing counseling forward in the field and to help low and moderate income and people of color become more successful housing consumers. We will have our meeting on this coming Thursday. Please be sure if you're planning on coming, we need your registration now, and we'll report back on the 16th for how that went for those of you that can't join us, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of interesting information for having come from that meeting. All right, everybody, we'll have a good weekend, and hope to see many of you next Thursday. Thanks. Bye.